The following story is about a real homicide investigation with graphic content. Viewer discretion is advised. Previously on The Murder Mind.
My name is Detective Velazquez, and I'm with Bill Davis.
Is he truly just a handyman, or is there more to it?
Nah, I ain't going in. I'm going home. So I went on, came on past and walked on home.
That made absolutely no sense. This is somebody that I know I'm gonna have to come back to because right now I can't wipe him clean. What I need to do is get this case into the news. The victim's wife was able to provide me photos of the actual necklace around the victim's neck, as well as his hands wearing the ring. We put this out into the media. Within an hour, the phones are ringing off the hook. One tip in particular comes in where a man says he bought a necklace from a man, but he feels strongly that is the necklace in the photo. That may lead me to who very well may be the killer. So this tip comes in, and this is really what a homicide detective needs. You have a piece of evidence stolen from the victim, a necklace. We put it out in the media. We want the public's help. And now we have somebody calling the police saying that they saw the news coverage of this stolen necklace from a homicide victim. And then this person saying that he thinks he purchased this from someone and he thinks it's the same necklace. It looks the same. The officer taking a call didn't ask that caller whether there was a ring accompanying with the necklace, but I knew this is something I need to ask this guy, because if he's got a ring and he's got the necklace, this is our guy. Whoever sold him this jewelry is likely our killer. So right now I got to get over to the precinct and I got to dive into what this guy knows. If this indeed is the necklace from this victim, I have an eyewitness who may have had a hand-to-hand transaction with the actual killer. So this is where I need to be right now. I'm excited. I can't wait to get over and meet this guy at the precinct. So I make my way over to the local precinct. The officer's there with this guy who came in, and he's got a necklace, and he wants to talk. Like, this guy's chomping at the bit. So I sit down with this guy, the tipster. He's a black male, and he says he was at Greenbrier Mall. Now, what's important about Greenbrier Mall, that's really close to where the crime scene was. And he's walking around, and he sees a guy, he's got a necklace in his hand. He's trying to get people's attention on the low. He said, hey man, I got this necklace here. We'll do a transaction right here in the mall, no one will know. He said he figured the necklace was probably stolen, and he thought maybe this guy boosted it from a car break-in. This tipster has bought and stolen items before from other people in the neighborhood. That's just what he does. Didn't think anything about it, paid the guy a small amount of money for it, and walked away. Goes home that night. He goes on to say he turns on the 5 o'clock news and he sees the story of this case of our victim missing a gold necklace, and he realizes when they mentioned where the crime scene was, he was at Greenbrier Mall. It's literally less than a mile away. He starts putting two and two together, and he looks at the picture from the TV and he looks at the actual necklace in his hand, and he's convinced he has bought the necklace of a homicide victim. So right now he wanted to be washed off. So as we're sitting there, I finally let me see the necklace. I got a picture of the necklace from the photograph given to me by the victim's wife, and this tipster produces this gold chain, and I'm looking at the picture and I'm looking at the necklace, and in my mind, they look like they're the same necklace. Of course, if this is indeed the necklace from my victim, I've got an eyewitness who may have laid eyes on the killer. So the questions come out. Who is the guy? Do you know him? Have you ever met him? This tipster goes on to say he's never seen this guy before in his life, but he says he got a good look at his face. The tipster goes on to say the person that sold him the necklace was a black male, was a man in his late 50s, neatly dressed, gray mustache, gray beard, softly spoken, and just someone that could blend in anywhere. It wasn't someone who was a hardened criminal in his mind. And this tipster, you know, he gave me his pedigree. He went down the list with me of things he's done. He's been to jail before. He's been arrested before. He's someone who knows the streets, and he's someone who knows how to read people. So he didn't get any bad vibes from this guy. So until he went home and saw the news and saw the necklace on the news, he never would have thought the person that sold him the necklace was the actual killer. So he didn't think anything about this guy, but he sat there and did this transaction for almost 5 minutes. So if this indeed is the killer that sold this necklace to this tipster at Greenbrier Mall, and I can verify that through the wife, the next step is to sit this guy down with a forensic artist and get a sketch. I could very well, by the end of the day, be looking at a sketch of the killer. It may be Bill. It could be someone totally a stranger to this victim. Who knows? But if I can make this and pull this off, I can put this sketch on the news, do another news story, and maybe get some more tips. So I thank the tipster. He did the right thing. He lets me take the necklace. He doesn't want anything in return. He wants nothing to do with this case because in his mind, he just bought a necklace from a dead guy. But there's only one person that can really tell me for sure if this indeed is my victim's necklace. So I got to get in front of this victim's wife. I call her, I say, are you available? She says, absolutely, detective. I said, I got to talk to you because I think I may have the necklace taken from your husband. So I beeline straight back to the crime scene. I meet the victim's wife. We sit down in the kitchen, and I explain to her that a tip came in. Someone thinks they bought the necklace after seeing our news piece on the case. And I sit down with the wife, and I pull the necklace out, and she lays it in her hand, and I'm watching her face. Showing this necklace is almost likened to how many times I've ever shown a lineup. When you're showing a lineup to a potential witness or a victim, and they're looking and they're scanning the photographs, I'm looking at their facial expressions. I'm trying to get a gauge on what they're feeling to what I'm showing them. And in this particular case, I'm trying to read her expression, and I start to see her eyes widen, and just then I think she's gonna look at me and tell me, that's it, that's Dennis's necklace. But instead, all of her expressions changed, and I started to feel like, wait a minute, this may not be it. And the victim's wife wrapped up the necklace in the palm of her hand and laid it back into my hand, looked at me dead in the face and said, this is not my husband's necklace. So at this point, this was a huge blow. And now we have flushed out this necklace. I told her I'm hoping that someone calls back and maybe sees this necklace or the ring somewhere else, because back when I showed up at the crime scene, there's 2 pieces of jewelry missing, the victim's necklace and his wedding ring. So while I'm there, I wanted to be thorough, so I start to show some photographs of the victim's hands from the autopsy to verify that I did indeed have an accounting of all the other jewelry on his hands. It clearly shows the victim's left hand with a wedding ring missing. And at that point, this victim's wife looked at both photos of her husband's hands and basically stopped in her tracks and said, wait, detective, his wedding ring is actually there. It's on his right hand. And I was blown away because initially, during the initial crime scene, I'm thinking 2 pieces of jewelry are missing, and I don't even know what that means. Initially at this crime scene, that wedding ring being stolen could have been motive. It could have been someone had a personal problem with him being married to his wife. Who knows? But at this very moment, this victim's wife is now verifying that the only piece of jewelry stolen at the time of her husband's death was the necklace around his neck. So at this point, all I have is a missing gold necklace. I had a dead end with this tipster, got nothing else going on with the jewelry. No other tips are coming in. I'm back to square one, hoping either someone else calls in a tip on the necklace or I start making some traction in some other direction. You never get everything on the first pass. You can canvass a neighborhood, you can knock on doors, and sometimes you gotta go back and you gotta talk to neighbors once, twice, 3 times. So leaving this victim's house that day, I started to walk the neighborhood again and do another neighborhood canvass. I started knocking on doors, re-interviewing neighbors. Well, one neighbor in particular, on my notes, I realized no one spoke to her. On this particular day, I knocked on her door, and she was an elderly woman who lived right next door to the crime scene. So I started to ask her about what she may have remembered on the night of the homicide. And man, did I hit a gold mine.
What I want to do is kind of just let you take it from that evening that is in relation to this case, and go ahead and just tell me what it is that you heard or saw or anything like that.
This woman was home on the night of the homicide. And although she didn't call 911, on this particular day, she's telling me she heard gunshots.
Well, I heard 2 pops, and I assumed they were shots.
She says, I know what gunshots sound like, Detective. She says, I heard a couple of gunshots.
And then after the two, I heard young voices. I didn't understand what they said, but the voice was spoken in a hurried tone.
And then the voices you heard, they were coming from which direction?
I thought they were coming from the apartment.
Across the back fence?
Uh-huh.
There's an apartment complex right behind her house. Same apartment complex that's right behind the victim's house where the crime occurred. And gunshots are very common coming from that apartment complex, but she didn't think anything of it.
Did you go outside?
I went on the patio, but, I didn't see anything.
Do you have a view from any of your window towards the driveway of the McGuires?
No. Bushes cover all of that. The privacy fence and those hedges.
Right.
Well, then I remembered back to when I showed up at the crime scene, the night this happened. The dog was barking loudly. The dog was out of control because all these people were in the backyard. So I asked this neighbor, this witness, when you heard the gunshots, either before hearing the gunshots or right after the gunshots, did you happen to hear the dog barking next door where the crime occurred? And this neighbor went on to say, Detective, that's interesting. I didn't hear the dog barking, but the dog barks a lot. He barks at strangers. He barks at any time the mailman shows up. But I didn't hear the dog barking right around the time the gunshots went off.
I said, I wonder if they've done something to Dennis's dog, to myself. I said, because he's not barking.
So basically, when you heard the shots, you thought it was unusual that the dog was not barking.
That's correct. And I said, that's strange.
And in my mind, at that very moment, I could think of only one thing, that the dog was probably familiar with the killer. Well, who could that be? Could it be a family member of this victim, a friend of the victim? Does that mean I'm looking too far out? I need to tighten my focal point to people closer to the victim. So this now has me thinking that whoever killed this victim is someone that's comfortable, not just with the victim, but with the dog as well. And then I thought about the handyman Bill, and I recall the victim's wife telling me that when they went on vacation, they actually used Bill, the handyman, to care for the dog while they were out of town.
The house was locked, right?
Oh, yeah.
So he had no keys to that?
No, he was just only to go back there and give the dog water.
Samson wouldn't bark at Bill?
He had, but once we mingle around and be around, he'd just calm on down.
So at this point, I realized I really haven't cleared Bill, the handyman. So I remember Bill telling me initially on the night of the homicide that after he left the crime scene, he walked over to the gas station right down the street to play the lottery numbers.
Just make this clear. When you left Dennis's house, you went straight to the store to play the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Which store did you go to? The liquor store?
Shell store.
The shell store. Okay, so you walked straight there and played the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So I figured this was a good opportunity for me to leave the actual crime scene and walk to the gas station and see and verify whether, one, they have video, and two, if they have a record of purchases for lottery tickets. Now, timelines are important. One of the things I wanted to establish was how long would it take an average person to walk from the crime scene to get to the gas station. So this was my opportunity, killing two birds with one stone. I walked from the crime scene to the gas station, which took me approximately 5 minutes one way. When I get there, I meet with the store manager and ask him, does he have video that goes back to the specific date that the homicide occurred? Unfortunately, which happens more often than not, this particular gas station was not recording. They had cameras, but the cameras were not recording at the time Bill claims he had purchased lottery tickets. So right now, the only thing I got out of this was establishing how long it took a person to walk from the crime scene to get to the gas station and back. So I go back to the office and I want to reach out to the medical examiner because one thing I want to know, the autopsy's done, and one of the most important things at autopsy is not just cause of death, but I know this victim was shot twice. I want to see what type of slugs I'm looking for, what type of weapon I'm looking for. So I call the ME and he goes on to say that they recovered 2 .38 caliber projectiles from this victim. So now I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a revolver. That explains why I didn't find any shell casings at the crime scene. This is great. I don't know what type of weapon, I don't know the brand of weapon, but I know the caliber. So that puts me in a forward direction in this investigation. Now, one of the things that homicide detectives do, and I learned along the way, is your crime may have a pattern. We don't know if this is a robbery, truly a robbery. We don't know if this is revenge. But one thing will tell you or put you in the right direction is if you find crimes similar to what you're investigating historically. So what I start to do is start to look at crimes in the neighborhood that were either robberies, thefts, and other homicides to see if a pattern would emerge. Could I uncover something that may shed some light on why this victim was killed? So I start diving in, and I basically put a grid around my crime scene and start expanding it and start running addresses and start running queries to histories to see what was going on in this neighborhood historically, starting from the date that my victim was killed, going backwards in time to 1 year, to 2 years, to 3 years, to 5 years, going back as far as I can go until I find something that may be relevant to the crime I'm investigating in 2007. And I kept going backwards and pulling theft reports and pulling robbery reports. I finally land on homicides. As I'm looking for similar cases, something just jumps out at me, and it's almost like it slapped me in the face. I find this case that's nearly 10 years old. It's an unsolved homicide from 1998. And what's crazy, the location of this particular murder is literally 50 yards away from where this victim in 2007 was killed. So as I start to dive into this homicide from 1998, I realized that this victim, Alfred Glass, was found in his carport, and he had been shot once in the chest and once above the eye, identically to how this victim, Dennis McGuire, was killed in 2007. And what's crazy, this homicide from 1998 is directly across the street from where handyman Bill Davis lives and had lived since the 80s, which means in 1998, when this victim was killed, Bill Davis was living right across the street. I'm starting to see a pattern emerge, and I'm thinking to myself, this can't be the same type of homicide. It's almost identical. Like, I almost fell out of my chair. I knew these two cases had to be related. I really got to dive into this 1998 murder, put the 07 murder on hold, and see if I can meet these two things up in the middle. I knew the original detective. He had been a homicide detective with Atlanta PD for many years and moved on and became an FBI agent. And I knew him. I had his cell number locked in my phone. I call him up and I start talking about the case, and I say, take me through it. He's doing exactly in 1998 what I'm doing currently in 2007. He's knocking on doors. He's interviewing neighbors. Some of the same neighbors that I'm talking to today in 2007. I couldn't believe it. So I said, tell me, what else did you do? He said, well, I'm doing my neighborhood canvas, and I go to the house right across the street from where Alfred Glass was killed, and I knock on the door. The hair in the back of my neck is standing up, because I know exactly what house he's talking about. That was Bill Davis's home. And he's knocking and he's knocking, and no one's coming to the door, and he says he's looking down through the hall foyer, through the glass on the side of the door, and he can see an elderly gentleman looking at him, but he won't come to the door. And not until an elderly lady comes to the door to answer it is he allowed inside the house. Almost 10 years earlier, this detective was dealing with the exact same thing, same situation with Bill Davis that I was dealing with in 2007. He wouldn't come to the door. Like, if you got nothing to hide, why won't you come to the door and talk to the cops? I had the same experience with Bill Davis. He couldn't believe it. He tells me Bill Davis in 1998 was one of his prime suspects in the murder of Alfred Glass. This detective goes on to say he learned that Bill Davis in 1998 had done some yard work for this victim across the street from him, Alfred Glass. Same as he did for my victim, Dennis McGuire, in 2007. I started to see a pattern emerging here. And because of the fact that Bill Davis lived directly across the street, and there was some circumstantial evidence of maybe some bad blood eventually that occurred between victim Alfred Glass and Bill Davis, he went to the top of the suspect list as far as this detective in 1998 was concerned. However, he goes on to say there were no eyewitnesses that could identify Bill Davis. There was no forensic evidence to link him to the Glass homicide in 1998, and eventually his case fizzled and went cold. So one of the questions I asked the original detective from the 1998 murder was what caliber of weapon was used to kill that victim. The detective goes on to say it was actually 2 different weapons. It was a .22 caliber removed from the victim's face and a .38 caliber slug removed from that victim's chest. So right now I'm looking at, even though there's 2 different caliber of weapons used to kill Alfred Glass in 1998, one of them is a .38. It's the same caliber of weapon used to kill this victim I'm investigating in 2007. So let's just add it up. What do we have? We have 2 victims of similar age, black males, associated with Bill Davis, who lives right across the street. Both victims shot, once in the chest, once in the face. Both of these victims killed with .38 caliber weapons. Both victims laying outside of their homes. In overt robbery, really not a motive. Both victims had their wallets in their pockets. So it's really not that. Both victims had hired Bill Davis to do yard work. I'm scratching my head thinking, this cannot be a coincidence. I mean, you don't have to be a homicide detective to put those 2 together. 2 and 2 doesn't equal 22, it's 4. There has to be something here. And I knew at that point, I had my work cut out for me. I knew at that point, I had just scratched the surface of more to come. I start digging into Bill Davis's past, and that's when I make a shocking discovery. And you're gonna hear all about it in the next episode.
Coming up on The Murder Mind.
I can't believe what I'm reading. It's crazy. I don't want to say it. I'm thinking it. Serial killer. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please hit the like button and subscribe. And please check me out on other social media platforms, Instagram, X, TikTok, and Facebook. Lastly, don't forget to come back for the next episode. You won't want to miss it.